All right. Good morning, everyone. And we're just about set for our Ag Issues program this morning. It's a really good topic as well, as we're going to talk about that here in just a second with Roger McEowen, Professor of Agricultural Law and Taxation, and Shawn Leisinger, Associate Dean for Centers and External Programs, both with the Washburn University School of Law. We're in commercials right now on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. But we will soon join the start of our program. And so if we have some gaps as far as no one talking, that is why. Just always want to tell people that as we do these interviews. So we will get going here shortly, and then we'll be set to go. All right, we've got our open on right now, so stand by. Good morning, everyone. Glad to have you with us on the program this morning. And we're going to have a really good topic to discuss this morning. It's about the rural attorney shortage that we have been seeing across many rural areas in the United States, but also the rural law program at the Washburn University School of Law and the work they have done to try and alleviate some of that situation as well. I'll be joined in just a bit by Roger McEowen, Professor of Agricultural Law and Taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, as well as Shawn Leisinger, who is the Associate Dean for Centers and External Programs at the Washburn University School of Law. You can also watch our program on StreamYard and on our Facebook page and also our YouTube page at 580 WIBW. That's all coming up on the Ag Issues program right here on 580 WIBW. But before we do that, let's get an update on the forecast. All right. And for those of you on StreamYard, right now we're getting an update on the weather forecast with our meteorologist, Dan Holliday. And Roger, boy, this is great running weather here in the mornings that you've had too.
Yeah, no, it's nice.
Or as you mentioned when you went up to Jackson Hole and didn't realize how cold it was going to get.
Yeah, it was. I headed out and it was 39 degrees, and within about 5 minutes, I realized that I should have brought my sock hat and my gloves because I froze my ear tips and my fingertips off.
Of course, this is Kansas. We could have that same weather here tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
I'm headed to Fargo Wednesday. I speak up there on Thursday, and then in Manhattan on Friday. But cold weather really hasn't hit Fargo yet. But then I go back in late November, and that's the one that's always tricky. I got stuck up there once for several days. I mean, actually on the way back, we got stuck in a storm.
Well, I don't have enough time, but I'll tell you a story about Kelly and being up there. Actually, it was in Minnesota, but hold on here. Stand by. All right, stand by for those of you on StreamYard. We'll get going here in just a second. And right now in the capital city, we have a clear sky, 55 degrees at Billard Airport and 52 degrees this morning at Forbes Field. This morning on the Ag Issues program, a pleasure as always to bring on to the program, as you hear him every couple of weeks, Roger McEowen, Professor of Agricultural Law and Taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, as he joins us on the program this morning. Roger, good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Good to be with you.
And also on the program, and it's a pleasure to have him on the program this morning, Shawn Leisinger, who is the Associate Dean for Centers and External Programs at the Washburn University School of Law as well. Shawn, good morning to you.
To you as well.
All right, let's get to it. Roger, as we look at this issue, talking about rural attorney shortages across many rural areas in the United States, a baseline on this. How serious do you consider this issue that we have with that?
Well, a lot of farmers consider it to be pretty serious because they have to travel quite a ways to find legal services, and hopefully those are competent legal services. And it's not just in Kansas, it's nationwide. In Kansas, we've got many counties that just have a few practicing attorneys, and we have a handful of counties, I think it's 4, if I remember correctly, Shawn, that don't have any resident attorneys in that particular county. And actually, I experienced that firsthand when I first started out practicing in Western Nebraska. My wife and I lived in Logan County, and I became the only resident attorney in that county. And by default, I became the county attorney because there was no resident attorney. And of course, I had taken no preparatory classes for that at all, which I'm sure Shawn does not like me broadcasting to the rest of the world that our students, you don't really have to take these classes to become a county attorney. But, I defaulted into that. And we've got about 80% of the population that live in rural areas, and only about 20% of those attorneys live in those same areas. And that can be duplicated in many areas across the country. Greg, the other problem we have is that many of the attorneys that are presently in the rural areas are aging out, and they are very interested in trying to find new young attorneys to take over their practice for them and serve those communities. Shawn and I were talking with one of our prominent rural attorneys out in Cimarron, who actually has had a very prominent case before the U.S. Supreme Court. And yes, you can litigate before the U.S. Supreme Court and be in a one blinky light town in western Kansas. And he told us that he would like to retire, but he said, if I were to retire, all my clients would show up on my front porch at my house. I need somebody to take over my practice for me. And it's really a big opportunity for our students and students elsewhere in the rural areas. When you get into a rural community, a small town practice, maybe a county seat practice, you often become, as the attorney, an important leader in those areas, not only practicing law, but providing counsel to banks and to the schools and the hospitals, and maybe there's a community college. And you're going to end up serving on boards and local nonprofit entities. People are going to look to you to do those types of things and serve their community in multiple ways. So I think there are great opportunities if we can just get them trained and get them out there.
And I'll ask both of you, but Shawn, I'll ask you directly first. For the students that go to Washburn University School of Law, or it doesn't matter which law school it is it just the simple fact that, like in other fields, they want to go to a big city, or that's the aspirations that they have as they go towards their schooling?
Well, traditionally, that's kind of been the big goal, was the big firm placement in the big city sort of thing. But we see that changing now. We've got more students coming, especially here in Kansas, out of rural communities, looking at quality of life, looking at getting back to the things that made their small town special. So we're seeing more students looking now at understanding what a small town practice can offer and wanting to do that. So we've had some pretty good luck starting to replace the massive issue that is the rural attorney shortage, both here in Kansas and nationwide.
Roger, let me ask you this then. You can say, and you can direct them towards that rural area as well, but there needs to be things that are taught living in a rural area, as far as it's a different animal from living in Topeka, living in Kansas City, versus living, as you mentioned earlier, living in Cimarron or any other small town that we see.
Yeah, Greg, I think there are two aspects to that. One is the desire to live in the rural community and have a passion to serve farm and ranch clients. That has to be present. And the second one, kind of related to that first point, is what if the student has a spouse? Not only does the student who now is going to be the young attorney in that area have to have the willingness, the desire, and the passion for it, but you have to convince that spouse that this is a good place to be, and that can present issues. That makes it difficult for a number of students that are married to make sure that this is going to work for them also in that rural community, and that can be tough. The second aspect of that, Greg, is that the legal issues for farmers and ranchers in many instances are uniquely different than they are from non-farm clients. Non-farm clients don't have special rules that farmers and ranchers often have, whether that's tax, whether that's farm program issues, FSA issues. It affects all these unique areas affect so many aspects of the law. Even fence law is different for farmers and ranchers than it is for somebody that's in town. And the reason I mentioned that is because there have been some states, including Kansas, and I've spoken to numerous state legislatures across the country on this issue, that they're interested in trying to provide financial incentives for lawyers to go into the rural areas, and often that is debt forgiveness. But the problem is bigger than just placing them in that area. They have to be specifically trained in the unique rules that apply to farmers and ranchers. And if they're not properly trained, then actually they can end up causing more problems than helping people. So that's kind of the second aspect of getting attorneys out into those rural areas. They have to be properly trained first.
An example of that would be what they've been trying to do in Kansas with doctors, placing them out in rural areas, providing that financial incentive.
Yeah, and that's fine with respect to doctors. It's the same thing in terms of the financial incentive, but medical issues are medical issues. The human body is the human body. You're going to have the same issues no matter where the person is at. But going back to Thomas Jefferson, the Congress very early on created special sets of rules for farmers because they viewed farmers as unique. And those rules, those special rules, are still with us today. And we see the carve-outs that are created for farmers and ranchers in every time that Congress revisits the tax code, for example, and farm bill issues. Non-farm clients don't have those issues. And so if you take a student that's never had any training in any of those issues, that's a problem. I heard your commentary as I was driving to the office this morning. You ran a news story on the shortage of rural veterinarians. They face the same issues. Rural veterinarians, rural CPAs, it's a problem with a lot of professions in the rural areas. And we're just dealing with the legal issue as well as the CPA issue too.
All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have more with Roger McEowen, Professor of Agricultural Law and Taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, and also Shawn Leisinger, Associate Dean for Centers and External Programs at the Washburn University School of Law, on this edition of the Ag Issues program here on 580 WIBW. All right, for those of you on StreamYard watching, we're in a commercial break on 580 WIBW, and we will get to more of our discussion, and a very, very, very informative discussion and we'll get into more of what we're seeing at the Washburn University School of Law coming up here in just a bit. And I usually do this as a standard. I hear one piece of audio in this ear, I hear one piece of audio in this ear, and hopefully the two don't mess me up. So. All right. Thank you, Nick. It's kind of as I put it, I know there's probably a simpler way. I just need to figure it out on how to hear if we're having issues at the station versus hearing you guys in this year.
Was there a problem with the broadcast?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Was there a problem that we were having with the broadcast?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just jokingly say that. So
I assume it's comparable to small children that try to rub their head and pat their tummy at the same time.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. So it's the old joke. If you see my eyes going clockwise, you know there's a problem. Because, and in my case, it's the equivalent of my brain trying to process all the information. And as you mentioned, Shawn, at 6 a.m. too. All right. For those of you on StreamYard, stand by, and we will be back with you here shortly. All right, stand by. We're back on the Ag Issues program this morning, right here on 580 WIBW. Roger McEowen, professor of Agricultural Law and Taxation, as well as Shawn Leisinger, associate dean for Centers and External Programs, both from the Washburn University School of Law, is joining us as the rural attorney shortages that we have seen across many rural areas in the United States is the topic of our program. And Shawn, I'll start with you. The rural law program at the Washburn Law School has been very important to tackle this issue. And there was just a recent announcement, by the way, of the Patterson Foundation, based out of Kansas City, Missouri. And that foundation provided $1 million in funding to support the rural law programs at Washburn.
Yeah, we were very pleased to have that. We've been working on that for about the last year now. We started in about 2017 with the Dane Hansen Foundation out in Northwest Kansas. They serve those 26 counties, Salina north to Nebraska and west to Colorado. And over those years, we had about 79 students out in that area. And out of that, about 16 have gone back to practice in that area. From that success, the Patterson Foundation, quite honestly, talked to the Hansen Foundation, heard about our success with that program, and were interested in helping us expand that statewide. So now we'll be able to place rural students statewide in rural communities. Roger had mentioned a little bit earlier kind of the programs that have been done with veterinary science through K-State to put rural vets back out. This gets those students into those law firms. They get to fully experience what rural law practice is over a summer, and they get to have the credit hours paid for, and quite honestly, a $5,000 living stipend to make it affordable for them to be out in those communities over the summer doing that particular work.
And that's in association with, or were you just describing the Third Year Anywhere program?
The Third Year Anywhere actually program complements that, because after that first summer, if they're out for the full summer, they want to return in their third year of law school, they can do a 20-hour week, in essence, apprenticeship, a mentorship, be trained to do the work in that particular rural placement in their last semester, finish their online hours of the courses they have to get the degree, take the bar exam, and be ready to practice. So ultimately, those students really can do that first summer, make sure that's where they want to be, and get back out there to be trained and ready to go when they finish law school.
You know, Roger, 79 students that have participated in that, that's a lot of success and to be able to do. And I'm sure the feedback you get from them and or the law firms have been very good as well.
Well, I think Shawn would echo this, Greg, that the feedback we get from the attorneys that have had some of our students working with them during the summer have been, what I have heard is unanimously positive. Shawn may have some other insight on that, but they have all just really appreciated this, and it seems to have worked very well. It seems to be working very well. And now I just met with one of our students late last week who is looking to do a third year anywhere with a firm in either Wyoming or Montana. And so we're spreading out. And I had a student that graduated a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, I can't remember. But he started out on his own in Montana. He came to a seminar that I did in Sidney, Montana in the summer of 2019, finished up his last year of undergrad at Montana State University, and then came to law school here. He's back in Montana, and he started out on his own. And talked to him not too long ago, and he said it's been great. He's so busy. All the other attorneys in town, they're in the county, in the area, are encouraging him. They're glad he's there, and he's looking actually at expanding his practice already. And that's just a year out or a year and a half out. So great results from this.
And the $1 million from the Patterson Family Foundation, Shawn, this is just going to complement everything that you've been able to do through Dane Hansen and work with other programs as well.
Well, yes, it's in part, a substantial part, it's going to expand the Dane Hansen program statewide, which we've had a demand for that for quite a while now. We have a lot of rural students who come to law school, come specifically to Washburn for our rural programs. So we'll do that. Another significant portion of it will help us basically develop a rural network statewide of rural attorneys to support them, to kind of connect them, and to connect these young rural lawyers so they have that support and mentorship down the road as well.
To both of you, how important is it to develop what has already been a pretty good pipeline, but develop that even further?
I'll touch on that first. One of the things we've been able to do is establish what are called 3+3 programs with what I call our rural colleges here in Kansas, Emporia State, Pitt State, Fort Hays State, and certainly Washburn as well, undergraduate. But those programs actually let students finish their first 3 years of their bachelor's degree, come to Washburn in that fourth year, and once they complete their first year here, that counts as their final fourth year for their undergraduate degree. So ultimately, those students from those rural areas can be pipelined kind of out of high school into those regional colleges, through Washburn, and back out within a 6-year period if they do our rural program, and be ready to practice. And that's unheard of. I mean, we've been able to kind of shorten the process a little bit, focus it a little bit, and get those folks back out into those rural areas. That's part of that pipeline, helps us do that.
And Roger, do you want to chime in on that too?
Yeah, we need to get that finished and established with K-State. We've got natural relationships with K-State. The 3+3 would just supplement that. I've taught in the Department of Ag Econ for years over at K-State, and we've got a natural pipeline through there. Plus, my work with the Ag Mediation Service at K-State gives us that natural draw through K-State. Plus, that's where the ag students go. That's where, if you're interested in being involved back on your own farm or in a rural community, you're going to go through K-State and back out. Well, if you want to complement that with a law degree, there's your natural connection with Washburn and K-State. So we really need to get that 3+3 program finalized with K-State. We've got it with the other ones, Fort Hays and Pitt State and Emporia State. We need to get that with K-State. So that's our focus, and that would really supplement things, and I think be much, and I think it would tie in really good with the K-109 or 105 initiative that K-State has of being really involved in the rural communities.
And Roger, recently, if you're a fan of RFD TV, you talked about that with several different interviews. But a couple of success stories, one student who's going to be graduating, going to go out to Dodge City, her hometown, to be able to do. The other, and my apologies, the name escapes me, but she had been working for a law firm, ends up buying the law firm. Did I hear that right?
Well, you did. You're talking about two different people there. We have one that's back in Dodge City now, just graduated, passed the bar exam, and is practicing in Dodge City. The other one will graduate this December, and will be down near Pittsburgh and Joplin in that area, and actually bought a building and will be starting practice on her own down there. So those are two of our success stories. The sister of the one that is now in Dodge City is currently here at the law school in her first year. So the cycle is continuing. We're really getting the ball rolling and getting some great momentum going that really, Shawn got started back in 2017 with that Dane Hansen funding to really jumpstart things.
And Shawn, that's just probably a microcosm of the examples of students that have gone through the law school, but having the success and being able to go wherever they're at right now.
Yeah, and quite a few of these students, you talk about kind of buying the practice. Roger talked about them buying the building. For a lot of them, literally once they're mentored, they're even being given these practices, these rural communities. The attorneys want to serve their area. So once students are out there trained and mentored for a couple of years, they're just taking over practices and having great experience with it. The student Roger talked about being in Dodge City actually started in our Hansen program, was with a branch of the firm in Salina, and then moved to their new branch, replacing an attorney who had left in Dodge City. So all of those connections just work very, very well to get these students out into those areas and get those experiences. And we're just going to see more of that.
And it goes back to Roger of the example of the gentleman in Cimarron that wants to retire but needs a replacement. You probably have so many examples of that in that aspect or in that situation right now too.
Oh, Greg, I get probably one or two requests every week from attorneys across the country, not just in Kansas, but since I go coast to coast, I have connections all across the country. I get 1 to 2 requests every week. Can you send me someone? Do you have someone that I could work with me for a couple of years and then take over my practice? There are just so many opportunities for our students. So what we're trying to facilitate is the desire and the willingness to do this. It's a huge issue that's out there, great opportunities for them. And we want the right people to know about it and take advantage of it.
All right, gentlemen, we are out of time. And this conversation could go on for another hour or so, but we have the time constraints. But Shawn Leisinger, it's been a pleasure to have you onto the program. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
And Roger McEowen, as always, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
That is Roger McEowen, Professor of Agricultural Law and Taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, and Shawn Leisinger, Associate Dean for Centers and External Programs at the Washburn University School of Law. They have been our guest on the Ag Issues program here on 580 WIBW. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll get an update on the news headlines, and we'll check the weather forecast that comes up next.